John, we were chatting a bunch before I hit record here a moment ago, but I just want to say welcome back to the podcast. It's so great to see you.
Thank you, Christopher. It's good to see you again. Good to see you well. Good to see you excited about your show. I love that.
Thanks, John. Well, I mean, you've been a guest here on the podcast many times now and have helped us make sense of the turbulence around us. In fact, that was the conversation we had last year about getting our lives back, because there's been a lot of chaos around us. But what I'm so appreciative of that you've brought to me, John, and to everyone here is the ability to suss out the turbulence within us. It seems like a lot of people, John, these days are on the brink of saying, I'm done. I don't even want to do this anymore. What's your read? Yeah, what's your read on this? What's behind this?
Yeah, well, so modern life's exhausting anyway, but then you take people through something like a 2-year pandemic and the politics and the economy and the crazy and family division. I had friends who couldn't go to Thanksgiving last year because of the mask issue and the vaccine, like divided, so we've been through 2 years of all that. And you asked about the depletion. When you rally for anything, you rally for a wedding, you rally for grad school, you rally for the birth of a child. Anytime you rally for anything, you tap into your reserves. Okay? People's reserves are really low.
Yes.
Yes, they're really low. And that's why people are misbehaving now. The low tolerance, the anger, the hostility, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, all that stuff is through the roof right now because we're beat up and we're tapped out.
Mm-hmm. So what I hear you saying is many of us have unknowingly been living on fumes for the last year, and all of a sudden we just drop on a dime. And it's not because of a momentary affliction. It's simply because that tank is immediately gone now, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because at some point you have to replenish your reserves. And if you don't do that intentionally, it doesn't just happen. It's just, you got to go to the gas station and put gas in your car. It doesn't just happen. Okay, so here are the symptoms that I think people can begin to identify with. The short-term memory loss. You pick up your phone, you can't remember who it was you were going to text.
Yes.
Right? You open email, and you don't remember what email it was that you were looking for that you knew you had to respond to. It takes a few minutes. You kind of sit there and go, what was I going to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You are going to bed earlier than you've ever gone to bed before. Right?
Oh,
people are exhausted at the end of the day. They don't want to go to a concert. They don't want to go out, and play basketball at the gym. They just want to sit in front of the TV or go to bed. So there's those things, the fragmentation, the exhaustion, and then you got nothing left for irritating people. I am so busted on this. Oh, it's true. You used to have a little bit of margin there where you could kind of go, all right, that guy's being a jerk in traffic, but, whatever, I forgive him. Now, irritating people, there's just nothing left. And it's because your margins are gone. Your reserves are severely tapped, right? And then the crazy-making part of it is everybody is trying to pretend like the world is back to normal. And I just want to say, folks, we've just been through 2 years of global trauma, and it has a cascade effect. Once you're done rallying, it's like being in a car accident. You survive, you react, you get out. Sometimes people even start laughing after a high adrenaline, event. But the next day and the next week and the next month, you start feeling it in your body and you feel it in your soul, right? There's a cascade effect. And so we are now in the cascade effect of the trauma of the last several years and of the last 10 years. And I'm just trying to encourage people, let's take care of ourselves. Like, let's be smart about this. You need to replenish your reserves.
when you wrote about it in the book, I was like, oh my gosh, I've actually never heard that phrase. And now it makes sense because I'm like, oh, that's why when this has happened, I've just drawn a blank. John, just 2 days ago, I was locking my place, going to an appointment, walked down to my car, went, did I lock the door?
Yeah.
Went back up, checked it, went, of course I locked the door. Got back to my car and went, where did this anxiety now come from? What's behind this mental fragmentation?
Yes, exactly. Well, that's a classic symptom of trauma, by the way. Trauma is mentally
really?
fragmenting. Yeah.
Oh.
So the short-term memory loss and the mental fragmentation are symptoms of high periods of stress and trauma. But there's also now the impact of technology. Because here's the crazy thing. While we were all being traumatized by a global pandemic, whether we knew we were or not, we spent more time on screens, right? I mean, everybody watched more Netflix. Everybody was, FaceTiming more and doing Zoom calls for work and all that kind of thing. Yeah, more technology. But as Nicholas Carr wrote in his book, The Shallows, that technology literally fragments your attention. It fragments the brain and how the brain works. We have shorter attention spans now. I'm sitting here writing this morning. I enjoy writing. It's what I do for a living. I enjoy my career. I'm sitting at my desk writing this morning, and I'm checking my texts, and I'm checking email. And I'm like, whoa, John, like your attention span has been so diminished by living in the world that we live in right now. So the fragmentation is coming from two places. It's coming from trauma, and it's coming from technology.
What do you think has happened in the space between the last time we talked, and I'll just frame it around these two books, because I think it's a good mile marker, if you will. Last time we talked, John, we were talking about how to get your life back. And this was on the heels of coming out of the heat of COVID. And we were talking about the 1 minute pause and really just exercises we could do. So then here you and I are today, a year and a few months later, talking again. What do you think has happened to a lot of people in that gap? Have things gotten harder, worse, more traumatizing, more crippling, more anxious? What do you think's been happening in the last year or so then?
No, it's much more subtle than that. People have gotten thrown back into, quote, normal life. Kids are back at school. You're not homeschooling anymore. You're able to go back to the office if you want. People are not having to work from the kitchen table on their laptop. There is a great deal of normality that has returned to the world. But the problem is this: our souls have not caught up. And so we are expecting the same level of output with a much diminished capacity of us. And then no one's talking about this. So, Christopher, here's a fascinating fact. New York Times ran an article on this. I do not know a single therapist with an opening. Every therapist I know, and this is globally, because I have friends, I have kind of therapist friends around the world.
Yeah.
They have 6-month waiting lists. This is a phenomenon. The mental health industry is just completely bombarded. Well, what's that? Well, what it is this. It's the cascade effect. We rally for something stressful, like a war or an economic fallout, like the 80s. We rally. But then we find ourselves back in our, quote, normal life, but without the capacities we used to have. Right? Our margins are smaller, our reserves are lower, our attention's fragmented. Frankly, our emotions are a little frayed, right? We're just kind of fried. But we've got to show up now, because the world's like, come on, we got to make up for lost time, right?
That's it. Yeah.
That's what's going on now. And it is the cascade effect. It really is. Because you'll see this is very, very common. People will go through childhood trauma, an abandonment, the loss of a parent, of some form of abuse. And then in their 30s, the cascade hits. And that's when they begin to experience fear of intimacy, revulsion to touch, that kind of thing. So you have the tsunami. No, you have the earthquake, and then you have the tsunami, right? The earthquake takes place way out in the ocean, and then it takes time for that thing to generate, the waves that then hit the shore. So we have re-entered normal life in a compromised condition, and people are not being given guidance and encouragement, first off, to explain, why am I so fragmented? Why do I have such a short fuse? Why do I want to just binge? I just want to binge, right? When you ask, what have people been doing in the last year and a half since we talked? They've been binging, Christopher. They have been comforting, right? Travel, concerts, we got restaurants back. Woohoo, let's go. So we've been trying to comfort, but that's not the same thing as restoration. It's not the same thing as soul care.
Okay, let's go right there then. Comfort and restoration are not the same thing. You want to suss that out for us?
Yeah, not even close, right? I mean, a bag of chips is comfort. A bottle of wine is comfort. Come on,
yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, just vegging in front of the TV all night, that's comfort. But it doesn't restore you. You just think about people who play video games, right? You think about how you feel after a 2-hour session of just binging on video games. You don't feel great. You don't feel well. TV, alcohol, any of that stuff, sugar, caffeine, it doesn't restore. It can comfort, and there's a place for comfort. But restoration is when you emerge from the event. You go to the ocean, you spend a week at the sea, you feel restored.
Yeah.
Right. You come back into your world and you go, oh, I feel better. I actually feel like I've got a little bit more margin. I've got some capacity back. I'm excited about my work. I'm excited about this new project. I'm excited about this relationship. See the difference there?
I do.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can the things that we use for comfort also be used in a restorative way, but it depends on the motivation and the way we're approaching them?
Sure. Somewhat.
Okay.
You bet. But yeah. So let's take exercise. So some people overdo it, right?
Yes.
And during COVID, you couldn't get to the gyms. Everybody's out on the streets. They were running, riding their bikes, and we were binging. We were working out a couple times a day. Those of us who are into that kind of thing. And exercise can be compulsive, or it can be restorative. And here's the fascinating analogy. So if you ask any athletic trainer, marathons, triathlons, any of that stuff, Olympic athletes, professional, footballers, what is the most important part of training? Every single trainer will tell you it's recovery. Your muscles need recovery more than they need the next workout. And if you just keep working out and you don't build recovery into your athletic program, you actually begin to go down. You peak and then you start falling off pretty rapidly. You need recovery. The body just simply needs rest. You need sleep, you need food, you need recovery, right? So exercise can be a good thing. It can be very restorative, or we can overdo it. And if we don't allow recovery in like that, people enjoy their work. Many people enjoy their work, but you can overdo it. Yeah, and then work is no longer something that's life-giving. It's now draining. Yeah, but there are processes of recovery and restoration that don't have anything to do with a bag of corn chips or with dinner with friends, right? So there are some things that don't go from category to category. They don't kind of play in both courts. Yeah.
Got it. Okay, so in the book you quote the founder of the Trauma Stewardship Institute. She said this: as hard as the initial trauma is, it's the aftermath that destroys people. John, why?
Yeah,
is that because we don't know how to heal through it or learn?
Yep. We don't know how to recover.
Okay.
Because the Russian playwright Chekhov said, any idiot can handle a crisis. It's the day-to-day living that wears you out. People rally to crises. People rally in accidents. They rally in fires. There's a phenomenal capacity in the human being to rally. But then the cascade starts. Then the fear hits. Then the depression hits. Then the anxiety comes in, right? Then the anger and the rage that you have no idea. Why am I so angry? Yeah. Then that stuff comes in. And so what she was saying about trauma is that unless you are intentional with your recovery processes, just as it's with training, with athletic training, if you're not intentional with your recovery processes, trauma will clobber you.
How has this played out for you and Stacy at home? I mean, how did you and how do you keep your head above the water then?
Well, it's bumpy, right? It's bumpy. Nobody does this perfectly. But I found myself binging. Like alcohol started becoming the comforter. Let's have a glass of wine with dinner. Now let's have another one. Instead of once a week, now let's do it 3 times, 6 times a week, and I'm like, whoa, I actually come from an alcoholic family. That does not have a good future on it. And so I'm like, hold on. And then it was dark chocolate. I'm just eating massive amounts of dark chocolate. And I have to stop and go, John, what are you comforting? You're using this for solace. You're using this to feel better, but underneath it, what is it that you are needing to comfort? Okay? So as we began, Stace and I, it's very important to name things when you ask about, like, what does this look like at home? We name it.
Okay.
You got to name it. Because psychological research shows that if you can begin to name things for what they are, you come out of a meeting and you go, whoa, that was a really hostile meeting. That guy was almost violent. Or you come out of a wedding and you go, whoa, that was really fake. I don't think those people even like each other. That whole thing was just a farce. You name things. You name things and it reduces the emotional impact that it has on you. So to come out of COVID, to come out of the pandemic and say, that was horrible. I lost so many things. I'm so disappointed with that experience. I feel beat up. Like, okay, that's good now. Now we can name that. I feel like my reserves are really low. Okay, now we can begin to deal with that. And the we can talk a lot about different recovery processes, but the reserves thing, the math is really simple. Your reserves are replenished when more is coming in than is going out. Okay, it's as simple as that. That's why people love vacation. Because on vacation, it typically more is coming in. You're getting rest, you're getting joy, you're eating food that you like, and you're swimming in the ocean, riding bikes, whatever it is. You're traveling, you're in the cabin in the mountains. More is coming in than's going out. You come back feeling better. If you do not arrange for that, you'll never replenish your reserves. It doesn't just magically happen. So in our house, we just began to say, okay, over Christmas, here's our calendar, and we're not doing anything other than these 3 things. We're not going to live crazy. Here's our vacation. We're going to protect it. Here's our margin each week. We're going to protect it. In fact, we have I typed up a little note for us that's taped to the refrigerator that says, defend margin. Defend margin.
Okay. Yeah, I want to talk about margin, but let's stay on naming things, the power of naming things. What happens in the brain? Is this because we're wired for narrative just in how we're designed as people? When we name things, does that bring closure to things? Does that bring clarity? Does that prevent the open-endedness, from our subconscious from running rampant? Like what happens?
Would you rather face a dog that's in front of you or a dog that is coming at you from an unknown distance behind you? You want to face the enemy in front of you. You want to name the thing. You want to get definition to it, clarity to it. There is a security to it, right? Versus the unnamed vague thing that's going to pop out at you at any moment. That's anxiety inducing. So, yes, the human brain is wired in such a way that we store all of our memories as narrative, and we process life as narrative. This is why the healing work of therapy usually involves people simply telling their stories. You sit down with a counselor and they say, well, what happened? Right? And as you begin to tell a story, you tell a narrative. Friends do this over coffee. This is what human beings naturally do.
Yeah.
Right? We tell stories, and the stories help us make sense of things. It helps bring order. And it helps bring definition. It may not bring resolution. If you lost someone, you've lost someone. But to name the grief and to name the things that you have lost, oh my gosh, that is hugely important to the healing of the soul.
Okay, this is fascinating, John. Let's talk about the necessity of grief in this whole conversation. Number one, why is grief so necessary? And two, is there an aspect of comfort we will only receive when we grieve? And I think about that through the lens of Scripture. He comforts all who mourn. Well,
yes.
That presupposes that we're going to go through the process of mourning. So, why is grief, why is the process of grief so necessary?
Yeah, okay. So, I was reading some research on burnout, and what this one of the leading researchers on human burnout discovered is that it is normally the accumulation of 1,000 disappointments. None of them great in and of themselves, but it is the accumulation of it. So if you apply that to the pandemic for a moment, now some people lost loved ones, and that's catastrophic. Okay, many people experienced the loss of work or enjoying their colleagues. They lost the gym. They lost church. They couldn't go to church. They couldn't be with people. Their small group couldn't meet. They missed their son's graduation. It was held online. They had to postpone weddings. You see what I'm saying?
I do.
It's 1,000 disappointments.
Mm-hmm.
None of them catastrophic in themselves, but over time, the accumulation of those, it would bring about burnout. But if you grieve them, if you name it, and you grieve the loss, you are able to release it. You're able to receive the comfort of God, and you're able to move on. And so for most people, they're carrying this massive amount of emotional weight because they have a lot of ungrieved grief. And again, I want to, everything from disappointment, just, wow, I'm really disappointed. That was very disappointing, all the way up to, wow, that was heartbreaking. That was catastrophic. All across that spectrum, we honor our grief by creating space for it, by putting words to it, so that the soul can process it and receive, the healing of God.
I think about the feeling of powerlessness and how it is so closely related to grief, at least for me. If powerlessness or the feeling of being powerless is so difficult, are we then motivated, John, to avoid entering the grief process to begin with after loss? Like, I'm just trying to put some logic together around this. If I don't like what it feels like to be powerless in life, my hands are tied behind my back, I cannot control this situation, why would I want to do more of that?
Yes.
Any thoughts?
Yeah, that's fascinating, Christopher. I think that's a fresh way of thinking about that. Because what you're trying to do is control your emotions.
Yes.
Right? And that's not the same thing as having a healthy emotional life. If you look at the life of Jesus, he had a very rich emotional life. He laughed, He wept. People irritated him. He raged at things, and other times he just simply walked away. He had a very rich emotional life. But if we limit ourselves to one or two emotions because the rest of it feels, oh, I can't control that. I don't like feeling out of control. That's going to catch up with you. Like, you're going to have to pay that bill. I think it's also, Christopher, because people are afraid if I enter my disappointment, I'll never come out. If I enter my grief, I'll never come out.
You nailed it. That's it, John.
Yeah. And I just want to assure you that the testimony of millions and millions of people who have been through therapy will tell you it is the most liberating thing in the world to grieve your griefs. It's simply not true that you will never come out. What is true is that you will probably go into a depression because your soul has no place to express what it's feeling. Anxiety as well.
So the neurobiological motivation to self-protect actually isn't that great when it comes to this situation, because if we're motivated by fear, what I hear you saying is when we're motivated by fear, like, oh, I'm not going to do this because I'm afraid I'm not going to get out of it, that actually keeps the bricks in the backpack, so to speak. And I'm like, well, hey, it's heavy as frick, but at least I can control it. Yes.
Now, you and I are coming at this from a perspective of faith. So let's bring that in for a moment.
100%.
Okay. So the human soul, when it experiences pain, does the same thing that the human body does. You flinch, you pull back, you withdraw. You hit your hand with a hammer, hit your thumb, man, you pull back. Okay, the soul does that. The soul closes in. We constrain, we grip, we go into lockdown mode. Right? You go into survival mode. But when you are in survival mode, it's very difficult to receive the healing care of God. Okay? It's only as we are open, right? Behold, I stand at the door and knock, Jesus says. If anyone will open the door, I will come in. Okay? And he knocks through our pain, he knocks through our addictions, he knocks through our discouragements, our fears. Will you let me in? And while our hands are clenched and we are in, fight or flight mode, it's difficult to receive the solace, the love, the comfort, and frankly, the healing presence of Jesus. Because the soul is healed through union with God. Your soul is made for union with God. And if you have pulled back, you burn your hand on the stove, you pull back, it's instinctive, that's okay. We need to come back to God and open our emotions to Him, the disappointment, the loss, the fear, the challenge before us, whatever it may be, and say, I need you in this. I welcome you in this. I want union with Christ here in my soul. Well then, there's a whole new level of resilience that is available to us. Because the book's called Resilient, but it's not a gym membership. It's not military training. This isn't about suck it up, people. Biblical resilience is what Paul prays for us in Ephesians 3 when he says, I pray that God would strengthen you by His Spirit in your inmost being, so that Jesus would live comfortably in your hearts. Biblical resilience is something that is imbued to us, imparted to us, breathed into us by the soul's union with God. That's very hopeful.
And the required component, therefore, is union, theosis. It's union with God. We build resilience and perseverance and such when we face, like James says, trials of various kinds.
Yes.
But this is a fascinating component of resilience that I've not thought of, that it is received through union with God. John, I just think about people joined with us today who maybe, like me, I mean, you know my story enough to know what I've unintentionally nurtured in a broken spirit. And maybe people today are joined with us saying, like a little baby, this is the last bit of control I think I have in my life, because there's been so much chaos, so much loss, and now I've held it so close like a baby. And the Lord says, like he said to David in Psalm 51:17, the sacrifices acceptable to the Lord are a broken spirit. Give me the very thing that you've been nurturing, so that I can take that which was meant to destroy you and turn it for good. John, we're so fearful, like we were talking about earlier, to let go, like, I'm not going to get through this. What does it take then to surrender this proverbial baby that we've been carrying into the hands of the Lord, so that we can exchange broken spirit, the nurtured brokenness, for resilience, steadfastness, life, and restoration?
Yeah, let me offer a couple of helps. The first thing would be is to find your emotions. Find your emotions, because emotions are the language of the soul. They are the cry of the soul. They are not the soul. They are the cry of the soul. What are you feeling, folks? What are you feeling? Start putting some words to it. Journal it. Talk to a friend about it. Put words to your emotions. Okay? Because then you invite Christ in. Jesus, I am so angry about what was done to my son at school. Okay, all right, good. That's a good start.
Yes.
Come into my anger, Lord. I open the door. I give you permission. I give you access to this part of my soul. Because what we typically do is we give God access to everything but this part of our soul. Yeah, but this is where the action is. It's your rage or your heartache or your loneliness or your fear. This is where the action is. Okay, so that's one thing. Another way, and a very, very powerful way into this, is you begin to love God in your suffering. This is very, very important. It's very rare, and it's very, very beautiful. Most people in their suffering develop a sense of resentment or betrayal towards God. And then again, your soul is closed off to his love and his healing presence. But it's like flowers as the sun comes back out. They'll open up after a cold night and receive the very nourishment they need from the sun. If you will love God in your suffering, you say, Jesus, not for it, in it.
In it.
Jesus, I am so heartbroken over this. I love you in this place. It opens that part of your soul up to his presence. And you ask for his ministry. Say, Lord, I need you to do what you said you'd do in Isaiah 61. I pray you'd heal the brokenhearted. I pray you'd set the captive free. Restore my soul. I pray for union with you in my grief, union with you in my fear. I love you in my suffering.
How do we, John, heal a broken, wounded spirit? It's the level of defeat that grounds us without a desire to do anything but barely exist, if that. This is so much deeper than overwhelm, so much deeper than burnout. This is, I'm in a boat, here's the sail, but there's no wind for the sail. I'm done. What do we do? And the reason I ask is because Proverbs talks about this so much.
Yeah. There are several things that you could do. You should go talk to a good counselor. You should go talk to a good Christian therapist, or your priest, or your pastor, or someone skilled in some soul care in your congregation. people on the Emmaus journey, or the different types of ministries that churches have available. Many, many churches have ministries available for grief care, soul care. But I would recommend, if you are in that condition, if you are that depleted, if you are that hopeless, call a counselor, call a therapist. You need to go talk to someone, because it is in the process that you will find the healing. Okay? Now, having said that, God did not design a world that only people with great therapists get better. He just didn't make that kind of world. You have God. You have the healer of the human soul, because he created your soul. And so what you cry out for is union. You cry out for oneness. You say, Jesus, in me. Put wind in my sails. Breathe life into me. In John 7, Jesus says, if you believe in me, rivers of living water are going to flow from your inmost being. Okay? Ask for it. Say, Jesus, I don't feel any of that right now. We've got the Air Force rocket show going on outside.
I hear it. That's pretty cool.
It's never happened in an interview before.
It's all good. This is real life. It's great.
Yeah, they're preparing for the Air Force graduation here in Colorado Springs. And so we've got all these, amazing types of aircraft flying over my house.
Wow. By the way, real fast.
Yes.
Do you still have snow on the ground?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, I saw that over the weekend.
14 inches of snow on May 19th.
John.
Yeah, it was horrible.
I mean, that's not super uncommon, though, is it?
No, we usually get one last swipe of winter, but not like that.
My friend Michelle Cushat lives out there, too, and I saw something on her Instagram, and I was like, wait a minute, what is going on here?
Yeah, it was
John.
One last freak storm. Yeah, one last swipe of winter before we escape into summer. Okay, well, what we were talking about was John 7, rivers of living water. The living water, and you're a great scripture lover, so in Psalm 1, right, he who meditates on the word of the Lord is like a tree planted by streams of water whose leaves never wither. Okay, this is Eden imagery. It is the restorative healing power of Eden, of the presence of God in our humanity, okay? And then Jesus offers it. He says, John 7, rivers of living water will flow from your inmost being. So you ask for it. You literally say, Jesus, I need the life of God flowing through my brokenness like a river. Flow through me. And again, because I believe resilience is something that is given to us by God, not something we don't gut it out. And that's why at the end of every chapter in the book, in resilience, is healing prayer. I want to lead everyone. Every chapter ends with guided healing prayer, because I just need to stand up with a big banner and say, Jesus still heals the soul. He still does it. He's very good at it. Just let him in to the need. Let him into the need so that union can take place there, so that he can heal you by his presence in you.
I'm so glad you mentioned that. In fact, I'll just take a quick time out to say, guys, listen, wintoday.tv/episode 299. There's a link to purchase John's brand new book, Resilient. It's available anywhere books are sold. But John, like I told you, I think it's your best one. At least it ministered so closely to my heart, and I'm so grateful for it. Along with that John 7 piece, I think about a commodity that is so limited, yet somehow we think it is the escape route, and that is willpower. You wrote this: hard times require something more than willpower. Why do we keep going back to it then? We push harder, we try longer, and John, it doesn't work. Why do we keep going back?
We love control.
That's it.
We love control. There were two trees in the Garden of Eden. There was the tree of life, and there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. And we chose the wrong tree. People still think that knowledge information, because it gives them a sense of control, they think that that is what is going to give them life. But it doesn't work. Understanding is highly overrated, folks. It really is.
What do you mean? Yeah, okay.
Oh, we are in a world right now that is absolutely in a fair with understanding, because we think that information heals. Information doesn't heal. God heals. The presence of the living God working in your humanity.
Yes.
Now, it can't take place at a distance. That's why we keep talking about union. It's not God way up in the heavens, hey, please, send a lightning bolt and make me a better person. It's not like that. It is the intimacy, right? It is the intimacy when Jesus says, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone opens the door, I will come in and we will share a meal together. He's talking about intimacy. Mm-hmm. You and I will be very close. We will be good friends. And then you add, John 15, I'm the vine, you are the branch. You literally need to be integrated with me, one integrated being with me. And then I can flow to you immunity and sustenance and nourishment and resilience and fruitfulness. So where in your life is Jesus not given permission? Where are you preventing Jesus from coming into union with you? Well, you open that part of your life up to him. You begin to love him there. I love you in my grief. I love you in my sexuality. I love you in my loneliness, so that the soul can come into union with God, so that the healing can come.
Okay, just to piece this together a bit, if we're talking about building resilience, if we're talking about experiencing restoration, number one, we've established that requires union with God, intimacy. But there's something we have to let go of. And I think about the example in Mark 10, Bartimaeus is sitting by the roadside. He's blind, and something rises up in his spirit to say, I'm done with this. Jesus, Son of David, have mercy on me now. The Bible says, Mark 10, verse 50, I think, and throwing off his outer garment, he ran to Jesus. Now, John, many of us are wearing proverbial outer garments of fear, shame, victimhood, circumstances outside our control, etc., etc. We've worn them so long that our true identity is indistinguishable from this thing that we're wearing. Okay. Where does denial come into play into this conversation? You said this, denial heals nothing. But I want to know, why is denial so easy and so accessible, even justifiable? Because it will keep us from the union that we need to receive resilience.
Well, that would be a long conversation.
Yeah.
Let's come at it from this angle.
Great.
Surrender. Surrender.
Okay.
What is it that you are refusing to surrender to God? I was really fried this last weekend, and I prayed, Jesus, what is it? And he said, you are carrying your children. We have adult children now, and they have adult-sized problems. They have marriages, and they have marriage-sized problems. They have kids of their own, and they have family-sized problems. And I am carrying all of it. I'm carrying all of it, which is unbelief. It looks like love, but it's unbelief. And what I'm saying is, I don't trust God to handle this, so I need to intervene. And he said, you need to lay all that down, son. You need to give me your kids. Okay, so that's like a Bartimaeus thing. Let that go. What are you surrendering? Right? It's the beautiful surrender. Because ultimately, what we do is we say, Jesus, I give you everything, to have you and your everything. You want his hope, you want his joy, you want his love and his capacity to love, you want the resilience of Jesus Christ. Well, what are you surrendering to get it? I give you everything, Lord.
Just kind of backing up into what you said and thinking about the path that so many of us would take inside our souls, and it might be this. At least I resonate with it. Unresolved disappointment that leads to distrust, leads me to disillusionment, leads me to cynicism, leads me to unbelief, leads me to, did God really say, I'm just going to take care of myself?
Yep. Yeah. By the way, Christopher, that's taking place on a massive scale right now in the world.
Is that right?
Yep.
I never thought about it in that trajectory, but now that I get inside the back end of it, I think, oh wow, this really started with, I don't know if I can trust you.
No, it started with the heartache. It started with the disappointment. That's where you have to go back to. Right? I wouldn't try and work your way backwards through all that. I would go straight back to the disappointment. I go straight back to the heartache and begin to open that part of your soul up to Jesus and say, I need you here. Now, gang, there's a difference because what we say is, if you will resolve this, we have a baby, I get married, I get that job, I get my career back, we recover financially. If you'll do that, then, you got to lay down those cards. You're playing poker with God. You lay it down and you say, I come back to you in my heartache and I choose you. I choose you, God. I need you here. Come and rescue me here in this place. I love you here. Because that's where it all started, was in the disappointment.
When we come back to this place of heartache, John, that in and of itself is the battleground, if I'm not mistaken. I think about your words from the book, our longing for life to be good again, because really this is what we're after, right? We're longing for the goodness of life again. And we started this conversation today talking about what feels like normal again. Restaurants are open, I can go to the movies, I can hang out, I'm mask-free, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm not talking specifically about COVID, but this is the most recent example, of course, that we have. The longing in our hearts is for good. So you said this, John, our longing for life to be good again will be the battleground for the heart. How you shepherd this precious longing, and if you shepherd it at all, will determine your faith in this life and in the life to come. John, I am so sobered by that. It's a call to action, but there's this, when I read that, I sort of shuddered like, Lord, where are the unaggrieved losses? Where am I keeping you at an arm's length? Where am I trying to go at this alone? You want to unpack that a little bit more? Why the battleground for our
heart? Jeremiah 2, my people have committed 2 sins. He boils all of the sins of the human race down to 2. He says, they have forsaken me, the fountain of living water, and they've gone and dug cisterns for themselves, broken cisterns that hold no water. It's where are you arranging for life? That has nothing to do with God. God's our backup plan for most people. He's plan B, right? And he doesn't like being plan B. So he will take away your plan A. He will take it away. He will make that house of cards come crashing down as an act of mercy and love to save your soul. Right? Because
we don't like to hear that right now. We don't like to hear that at all. But it's so true.
Everybody knows that what I'm saying is true.
It's 100% true, John.
Yeah, you know it to be true. In Ezekiel, he says, if any of my people set up an idol in their heart, I, the Lord my God, will come after them, and I will bring down their idols. And then here's the loving phrase, in order to recapture their heart. See, COVID was a shaking. The pandemic was a shaking. And it revealed where our true allegiances lie. where we go for comfort, where we go to feel secure.
Wow.
Yeah. It revealed. It was so exposing. Okay. So we're in Jeremiah 2, and we have our broken cisterns. And what we do is we turn from them, and we say, I don't need to have a child for you to be good. I don't need to get my job back for you to love me. What I need first, before those good and beautiful things, they're good and beautiful things, but what I need first is you. I choose you, God, above all things. This is Psalm 73. He says, I was so embittered in my heart. I was so embittered. And then I came into the sanctuary of God. I came to my senses. I came into the presence of God. And he says, who have I but you? Who have I but you? Right? My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever.
That's Psalm 73.
Yeah.
Yeah, wow. Wow. Huh. It just hit me in a fresh way, John. Because so many of us are, through shame, through fear, just going the route of self-protection, self-promotion, to fill the longings and the aches of the heart. And I think there's a question forming out of this, because all of us feel this level of instability then. And back to your Ezekiel reference, which I think is so spot on. If we're feeling this level of instability, why don't we go any further to get the clarity we need? You talked about that, in fact, in the book. What motivates us from asking, I wonder why this is the case? Is it pride?
Yeah, independence, stubbornness, foolishness. There's just a quality to humanity that the scriptures simply use the word foolish to. Right? You're trying to make sense out of something that doesn't have sense to it. You're just being foolish. It's dumb. Yeah, it's the independent life cut off from the living God.
Do not worry is not just a helpful suggestion, it's a command. You talked about this in the book. What do we need to know about the severity of apprehending that? It's a command, not, hey, it might be worth your time to pay attention to this.
Jesus is 100% committed to your life. He wants life for you. He says, I have come that they may have life and have it to the full. He cares profoundly about the things you care about. He cares about your humanity. The restoration of your humanity is the purpose of his mission. He came to rescue and restore you as a human being. This is what it's all about. You're a son or a daughter of the living God. Okay? The cost, the stakes that we're playing at, is that if we continue to choose something other than Jesus, he can't help us. Right? You can't play this two ways, gang. And so, do not worry. Do you know how much emotional energy, margin, mental space you could get back in your life if you stopped worrying? It would be a massive rescue. You'd have all kinds of margin, emotionally and mentally, if you stopped speculation in your life. That's why he's so serious about these things. If you don't, well, you burn out.
I think this would be a great place to land this conversation, John, because I want to help people walk out of this conversation with not simply information, because information will not change our lives. Applied information that can be used by the power of the Holy Spirit to catalyze transformation is what we're after. So creating margin is a concept we talked about earlier in this conversation, but how do we create it? How have you and Stacy created it so that we can position our lives to resilience?
I say no a lot. I'm the most disappointing person I know.
Tell me more.
I just don't answer people's texts. I don't answer their phone calls. I don't answer every email I get. You cannot live at the pace that the modern world wants you to live and have anything like margin. So we say no to stuff. Our kids needed some help yesterday, and we said no. It's hard to say no. We said
especially
no.
to your kids, yeah.
Yeah, because we knew we needed Sabbath. We needed Sunday. We needed a day of rest, right? So lots of things like that.
John, is there anything that you've learned in the last year and a half that is new and fresh that you haven't known to be so true in the core of who you are in the last even 5 or 10 years? Like the last year and a half accelerated an opportunity to know this. Anything like that in your life?
Oh, of course, but there's no way I'm going to share it on a podcast.
Fantastic. That's great.
That's my treasure.
That's awesome.
Right?
As it should be.
That's my inner life with God.
As it should be. Right.
Yep.
So good. Well, John, this book, Resilient, is incredible. I encourage everyone to go get a copy. Again, wintoday.tv/episode 299. It's available everywhere books are sold. John, you are such a treasure in my life. You have breathed life in me when I needed it the most, and the Lord's just used you in a powerful way, and I love you for it. I'm so thankful for this conversation. I'm proud of you. I love this book.
I love you too. I love you too, Christopher. You're a really good man.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Hey, I don't do this too often on the podcast, but would you pray for the listeners, for the viewers here on YouTube, and just send us off?
Yeah, let's do that. Jesus, above all things, I need union with you. Nothing else will do. Willpower won't do it. Yeah, gutting it out won't do it. I need the presence of my Creator inside of me, bringing resilience and hope and love and joy and life. Jesus, I give myself to you for union and for oneness. Amen.
So good. Anything else, John, you want to share or leave with people?
No, that was beautiful. Thank you.
Awesome. I appreciate you so much. Hey, tell people where to connect with you in the ministry.
Yep. So we're wildatheart.org,
Awesome.
wildatheart.org, and you can find us, our films, our podcast, our events there. Yeah.
Awesome. John, thanks for being here. You're such a hero.
Yeah, thanks, man. It was an honor.